Once upon a time, in a small village called Sunrise Sunset, lived a young boy and his mother. The boy's name was Jack, and he was an adventurous lad who loved climbing things. In fact, anything that Jack could find to climb, he climbed, especially trees. Up and down Jack would go, up and down, and up and down. This is how Jack loved to spend his days. Jack and his mother were very poor, and many a night Jack and his mother would go to bed hungry because there was no food in the house to eat. This made Jack's mother very sad, and the poor woman would sit by the fireplace, crying her heart out. Jack felt so helpless when he saw his mother cry, and he so desperately wished that there was something he could do to make her happy. "Oh, Jack," his mother would say, "what is to become of us? Without any money and without any food, we will surely die."
"Not to worry, Mum,"
Jack would say, trying to cheer his mother up.
"All will be well again, you'll see."
But nothing Jack said could ever cheer his mother up. Instead, she just cried and cried and cried. One day, Jack's mother, who was finally at the end of her tether, came up with an idea to get some money. "Jack, my son," she said, "tomorrow you must take our cow, Lindsay, to the market and try and get a good price for her." Jack agreed to do as he was told, but it broke his heart in two, for he so loved the old faithful cow, whose brown, soulful eyes had always been a great comfort, and even though she was old and had a slow walk, she had been a very loyal companion. The very next morning, Jack woke up early and went to the barn to go and fetch Lindsay. The old cow must have known that she was about to be sold, because she looked at Jack with the saddest of eyes. Jack gave his friend a gentle pat on the head.
"Don't worry, Lindsay. One day, when I'm rich, I'll buy you back and bring you home."
And so Jack and Lindsay set off to the market. On the way to the market, Jack decided to stop and rest a while. Suddenly, Jack saw the strangest, most peculiar sight of a man he'd ever seen. The man, who was a peddler, came hopping and skipping along the road and was wearing a yellow hat, a bright purple coat, and red pointed shoes, and thrown over his shoulder was a big leather bag. When the peddler saw Jack, he started to do a little dance. Once the peddler stopped dancing, he took off his yellow hat and made a little bow.
"Hi-yo,"
said the peddler cheerfully.
"Fine-looking cow you have there."
Jack smiled and said proudly,
"Thanks for the compliment, sir. Her name's Lindsay, and I'm taking her to the market."
The peddler looked Lindsay up and down, and then he said, "Then you're in luck, laddie. I'll buy your cow." Jack could not believe his ears and was ready to start bartering a good price when the man put his hand inside his bag and produced a handful of beans.
"I'll give you these beans in exchange for your cow," said the man.
Jack was horrified, for he had expected a handful of money, not beans.
"What on earth am I to do with a handful of beans?"
cried Jack. The peddler got a twinkle in his eye.
"Ah, but these aren't just any beans," said the man. "These beans are magic."
And on hearing these words, Jack, for some mysterious reason, became so enchanted that he took the beans and ran all the way home. When Jack arrived home, his mother was waiting anxiously at the front door. She was pleased to see that Lindsay was no longer with him. "How much money did you get? Did you get a good price?" his mother begged to know. Jack opened his hand and showed his mother the beans. Poor Jack's mother nearly fainted from shock. "You foolish child!" she scowled. "How could you do such a stupid thing? Now you have ruined us!" And in a state of shock, Jack's mother grabbed the beans and threw them out the door. Jack felt awful for what he'd done and tried his best to apologize, but his mother, being too upset to listen to him, sent him to bed while she went and sat by the fireplace and cried and cried and cried. That night, while Jack slept, a strange thing happened. The beans that Jack's mother had thrown out the door had begun to sprout, and then they started to grow and grow and grow. The following morning, when Jack opened his eyes, he thought it was still night, for his room was so terribly dark that he could hardly see his hand in front of his face. Jack walked to the window, opened it, and there, standing in the garden, was a huge, oversized, humongous, ginormous plant, which was so tall Jack nearly fell out of the window trying to see the top of it. Jack ran out into the garden and examined the plant. The plant had a thick stalk that twisted round and round and round and was so high that it disappeared far beyond the clouds. Now Jack, as you well know, was an adventurous lad, and on top of that he loved climbing things, so one can understand why Jack, without a moment's hesitation, started to climb the huge, oversized, humongous, ginormous stalk. And up Jack went, and up Jack went, and he climbed and climbed and climbed until Jack's mother, who was standing at the bottom of the stalk, could no longer see him. When Jack reached the top of the stalk, he was so far above the clouds that when he looked down, he could no longer see his mother, his house, or even his village for that matter. At the top of the stalk, Jack started to follow a long, winding road which led him right to the front door of a huge, oversized, humongous, ginormous, magnificent castle with long, sharp spirals, beautifully coloured glass windows, and wide, bold portals. Jack was enchanted. Finally, Jack knocked on the castle door. The door slowly opened, and there, towering over him, stood a huge, oversized, humongous, ginormous woman. A giant of a woman. The woman took one look at Jack and said, "You best be off, laddie. My husband, the giant of these heavens, likes the flesh of young children like yourself, and he'll eat you up in one quick bite." The woman was about to close the door when a heavy, thundering noise could be heard from somewhere inside the castle. "Oh dear!" cried the woman. "My husband is on his way. Quick! You best hide before he sees you." followed the giant woman to the kitchen. There she opened the door of a huge, oversized, humongous, ginormous cupboard, and Jack had to jump quite high in order to get inside. Just as the woman closed the cupboard door, the giant came into the kitchen. Now the giant was not a good-looking chap. He had red, gnarling eyes and sharp yellow teeth, but most importantly, he had a very keen sense of smell, and the moment he entered the kitchen, he roared, "Fee, fi, fo, foy, I smell the blood of a little boy." On hearing this, the giant's wife was petrified that her husband would find Jack, so she tried her very best to distract him. "Oh, what nonsense," said the giant's wife. "You're just imagining things. You must be smelling the fine dinner I've prepared for you. Now come, sit down, then I will bring you your meal." The giant did not argue with his wife, but sat down obediently and waited patiently for his wife to bring him his food. Then the woman opened a huge, oversized, ginormous, humongous oven and took out 2 grilled sheep, 4 grilled chickens and 3 grilled pigs, which she gave to the giant, who ate them up in a few hasty gulps. Now Jack, who was still hiding in the kitchen cupboard, was becoming very curious to see what was going on, so he opened the cupboard door just a wee bit and peeked outside. There he saw how the giant pushed his plate aside and called his wife. "Wife, bring me my goose." The giant's wife went out the kitchen for a moment, and when she returned, she was holding a goose. Not any particularly special kind of goose, just an ordinary plump goose with ruffled feathers. The giant looked very pleased when he saw the goose, and he smiled a big smile from ear to ear, revealing an awful set of rotten, yellow-stained teeth. But the goose was not very pleased to see the giant.
"I'm sick of being used by you,"
said the goose.
"I wish I could be owned by someone who had a kinder heart."
The giant looked at the frightened little goose and chuckled. "Oh, shush! You belong to me, and my wish is your command. Now do as you're told and lay me an egg." And upon these words, the goose nervously fluffed her feathers, and with 2 ticks of her tail, laid a beautiful golden egg. Jack could not believe his eyes. A goose that lays golden eggs? Now that would surely please his mother. After the egg was laid, the giant stretched out, yawned, and fell asleep. "Now's my chance," thought Jack. "I'll save the goose from such a cruel master." Then Jack jumped out the cupboard, grabbed the goose, and was just about to run out of the kitchen when the goose, being the excitable little creature that she was, gave out a huge cry, which awoke the giant in an instant. The giant was furious when he caught sight of Jack running away with his precious goose, and he set after him like a bolt of lightning. Jack, realizing his life was in grave danger, ran as fast as he could. When Jack reached the beanstalk, he could hear the giant thundering after him. Jack, as quickly and nimbly as he could, started to climb down the beanstalk, but the giant was not far behind. As Jack descended faster and faster, so did the giant. The giant took huge leaps and bounds down the beanstalk, and soon Jack was only an arm's length away. Jack went faster and faster, not daring to look up, out of fear of losing his balance and slipping. The giant's weight was pressing heavily down on the beanstalk, and each step he took caused an ear-deafening, terrifying tremor which could be heard from miles away. Jack could feel the giant's hot breath burning like fire as the giant was getting closer and closer. Finally, Jack looked down, and there, standing at the foot of the beanstalk, was his mother, who was so horrified at the sight of her poor son being chased by a big, ugly ogre that she nearly fainted.
Suddenly Jack got an idea. "Quick, Mum!" he shouted. Go fetch the axe!" Jack's mother knew there was no time to waste, so she quickly ran into the house and fetched a razor-sharp axe. Meanwhile, Jack, who still had a way to climb before he could reach the ground, held on as tightly as he could and slid all the way down to the bottom. With both his feet firmly on the ground, Jack took the axe from his mother and chopped down the beanstalk in one mighty blow. Down came the beanstalk, and down like a ton of bricks came the giant, roaring like a wounded lion as he fell through the air. When the giant hit the ground, he was killed instantly. Jack's mother was so relieved that her son was safely home that she ran and embraced him. With great excitement, Jack held up the goose to show his mother. "Look, Mom, I've brought you a magic goose." And to prove his point, Jack gave the goose a little stroke. "Come on, Goosey, kindly lay me an egg." The goose, pleased that the giant was no longer her master, ruffled her shiny feathers and with 2 ticks of her tail laid a perfectly rounded golden egg. Jack's mother was delighted, for she realized that she and Jack would be able to live very well on the riches that the goose's golden eggs would provide, and from that day on, she no longer cried and was always in the very best of spirits. Now Jack never saw the peculiar man who had traded the handful of beans for his faithful cow Lindsay again, but one morning Jack awoke and heard a strange noise outside his window. He ran outside, and there, standing in the meadow, was Lindsay. Jack could not believe his eyes, for he had given up all hope of ever seeing the old cow again. Jack embraced his loyal friend, and together with his mother and the goose, they all lived happily ever after. And of course, Jack, being the adventurous lad that he was, continued to climb everything and anything that he could find.